First of all, I would like to ask you who knows something about Sustainable Livelihood Approach or Sustainable Livelihood Framework? Basically. It's interesting because that framework is a product of research at IDS. So it is something IDS should be proud of, but you don't learn about it, which is very strange. And then the other thing, who knows something about Polanyi? Let's say an economic anthropologist. Yeah, a little bit. Okay, good. So I will try to cross these two things. And the first thing I will do is to explain you the basics of this sustainable livelihood approach. Everything is changing suddenly. They still see me rather than my knowledge. Perfect. Yeah, thank you. And then I will try to make it political, as I said, by crossing it with the ideas of Polanyi. And if we have time and you're very much interested about it, we could try to also introduce something about actor network theory. That is also an interesting addition if you would do research on development. And when I say development, I mean trying to improve people's lives everywhere in the world where people really need to improve their livelihood. It's not only in developing countries in the global south or even in areas where people are excluded in Europe or elsewhere. You could even apply the sustainable livelihood approach on Elon Musk if you want and learn a lot about what he's doing wrong in society. Yeah. So the framework was devised to understand how people try to live in a certain place, and it was diffused by DFID, so that is the British Institution for Cooperation, to analyze poverty and to find ways to help the people and to do what they call development. Okay, so and it started somewhere in the 1980s and was formalized in the 1990s. So, and the approach is sometimes also called framework, and this is the framework. So don't try to understand everything now by reading all this. I will try to detail this. So the first thing is they start with, can you read the framework there? They start with a vulnerability context. So try to understand what are the dangers that the people have to face if they want to survive in a decent way. That can be the environment, that can be economic shocks, like say an economic crisis, that can be a political problem, a civil war, even if you want, and all sorts of things that are happening in their own society. And so in each of these dimensions, you would first, as a researcher, trying to set up a development program in such area with such person to see, are there any shocks in these events? Imagine climate change, because some of you are doing work on climate change, and we know that there are lots of exceptional events in climate, like heavy rains, or like long periods of drought, or a long cold period that is unusual, and this is a shock in the environment that will threaten people's livelihood. And also, I think this is intelligent, because I'm not very, very fond about sustainable livelihood approach. I'm rather critical about it. But one thing that I admire is that they also include temporalities in it. So considering the fact that in many places, in all places of the world, you have seasons. I mean, in the climate, you have seasons, and so that the conditions are very different depending on the period you're looking at. And you have also temporalities in the economy, and you have temporalities in lots of, well, mainly in environment and in economy. In a place like this one here, if we would go back in the pre-industrial era, the seasonality will mean that if you are a farmer somewhere in Sussex, and the winter is approaching, that you know that during the whole winter until the end of spring, nothing will grow. So you cannot go into the fields to fetch what you need in order to feed yourself and your family. So you have to make stocks during summer and during fall in order to survive the winter and the first day of spring. Okay, then the second step, I will go deeper into that because this is the star of the Sustainable Livelihood Approach. It's called the asset pentagon. And so it's analyzing the impacts of these vulnerabilities on what is called livelihood assets and sometimes also called capitals. But we will go on this in deeper detail in a minute. I see that you take lots of notes, but of course the PowerPoint will be available to you without any problem. And even this is recorded, so you can listen to me again and again, and I will become very famous. Yeah. Double speed. Double speed, yes. So the third thing is to see, are there still other things that impact people's livelihood? And yes, it's what these researchers call structures and processes, and they are transforming the let's say the political, economic, and cultural conditions in which the people behave and try to survive, and it's mainly controlling their interactions between each other, and that will determine very much if they have easy access to these livelihood assets or these capitals. Yeah, and then it's not yet the last step, but nearly the last step, with their assets and under the conditions that are created by the processes and the structures, they will think about how will we cope with the fact that we want to survive. What are the strategies we will set up in order to improve our life, or possibly even in order to maintain our living conditions, because there has been a shock and so we have to recover. So the assets are the things that are available to make a kind of recipe and to make a better living afterwards. And the last step in the analysis is to see what are the outcomes. Do the strategies that they choose for succeed or not? And are the strategies the good ones so that they improve the living conditions, or on the contrary, didn't it work? So that's the outcome. So all this is very interactive in the sense that the structures and the processes are very important to understand how they affect the context. So how society, in fact, is prepared to react on the shocks and the vulnerabilities. Terry is an author of a famous book that's called a co-author of a book that's called At Risk, and sees how societies are prepared for natural hazards, and it's all a matter of how society is organized. Someone here is from Japan. Japan is a very nice country where they have a long experience of living with lots of different natural hazards, and it's a society that is fairly well prepared to cope with such shocks. So that's a key relation. And the other key relation is that, of course, the livelihood outcomes, certainly if they are positive, they will increase the livelihood assets of the people. So the trumps they have in their hands in order to improve the position in society. Yeah. Sometimes it goes wrong, and the outcome of the strategies means that you go into deeper poverty. Yeah, we must take this possibility into account as well. So the assets, they are also called capital, and there are 5 of them. That's why they are proposed in a pentagon. And the basic idea there to choose a pentagon is to say, if you have 0, for instance, let's look at human capital. I will explain in a minute what this means. But if you have no human capital, you'd be there in the center. And the more human capital you have, the more you're away from the center of the pentagon. Okay, and so you have 5 types of capital. The first one, human capital, and this is your own abilities as a person. So your health is, in fact, that's the first one, your health, so which means ability to work, and the skills and the knowledge that enables you to do the specific work that you want or must do in order to survive. Yeah. You would be a hunter-gatherer, and you don't know about the plants that are edible, the wild plants that are edible and those that are toxic. You don't have the skills, and even if you have the labor capacity to pick all of them, it will go wrong. Yeah, so you need the skills at the same time. Second one is social capital. On the left there, that means how do you relate with other people? I think that might be very helpful for many of your survival strategies. Again, imagine hunting in the savannah, in Africa, if you want. If you're alone, it will be very difficult to get something, especially if you want to get large animals and you have to work together in order to do this. So you need a network of people for doing it. Natural capital is mainly not mainly, it is what nature offers as possible potential resources to you. Also, you need access, of course, to nature for doing this. And in many cases, this is access to land, and even more to be secure about it, it is land ownership. Yeah, so it means actually that I think it's a very strange idea, but that you are owner of a piece of nature on this planet. We don't feel like this. Being owner of a piece of nature is nature. But no, we try to privatize it for reasons I will come back in a few minutes. Then the physical capital is the things in the environment that are produced by people. Yeah, so that will be things like roads. That will be, but it also includes things that you have to use in order to extract your resources from nature. So the tools and the machines that are necessary will also be included in this. And the last one is financial capital, and where you have, it's in any type of society, you always have this, you have a stock, like your savings, for instance, and then you have rolling finance, or your monthly income in your case, but in all sorts of society, people tend, in order to resist to the shocks, to build up some savings to face them, and next to that, there are the regular incoming resources. So the savings of the farmers in summer and in fall is creating a stock in order to face the winter and on the beginning of the spring. Yeah. So financial capital is a little bit, in my view, a weird word, because it can be really money, and that's in modern societies the most important thing. But it can also be pieces of nature. So it can be the granary, it can be your livestock that you can sell to other people in case of need. So it's not always money, it's always things that you can stock and sell in case of necessity. And so this is the most appealing thing in Sustainable Livelihood Approach. You enter into a village and you will develop it. And so the first analysis you will do, how are the different capitals in that village organized? Yeah, and look how much physical capital is there, who owns the land? In other words, what are the number of resources in the land? If it's a desert, you cannot extract lots of resources of it, but if it is fertile, very fertile land, it becomes very important, and so on and so on. And you go through the 5 capitals, and you can do that at different scales. You can look at an individual. It's much more logic to look at a household, which is the kind of societal unit that organizes consumption and the reproduction of life. Yeah, making children and maintaining your own life day in, day out, the community, even the region, if you want. So this is not social livelihood approach. This is a thing I like to do there. And that's to say, well, if we look at the 2 basic elements in how societies are organized, you have 2 things. One is stratification, and that means how rich are the people, and how rich means how much of nature can they, how much resource can they extract from nature. In our present society, I was naming Elon Musk, it's mostly how much money do I own, but of course, if we go to other elements of the world, we should use the word resources because it's much larger. And the second, so this is really your power based on the relation between the people and the environment in which they live. And the other one is the relations between people, rank. So it's like in an army, you can be the general, and so the head of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. And if you're a sergeant, you are the head of 10 people. And if you're a soldier, you're just obeying the other ones. So that's rank. That's how much power do you have over other people? These are the two basic things to understand how a society is organized in terms of power, relation to resources and relations to other people. And then what capitals are related to stratification? All the ones in green. And what are related to rank? All the red ones. And then you see that human capital and financial capital affect both access to resources and power over other people. Yeah. And then I said, well, why did these guys at IDS decide the position of each of these capitals on the pentagon? I can understand human capital on top. Yes, this is the most important. What we start with this, that's me, you, or the people you want to help. So it's logic. But if we reverse these two ones, wait, if we reverse, nope, something is going wrong apparently. Yeah, something is going wrong. Okay. Yes, very strange. But so I reverse financial and natural capital. And then you see the two green ones that relate to stratification that are on bottom of the pentagon, and the red ones are on top. And then you can say the one on top, they relate to rank. And so you can change ranks between people in society, but directly it will not affect their access to resources. And the other way around, if you look at physical and natural capital that are together, you can say I can improve their access to these two capitals, but it will never directly change their rank in society. Yeah, so it's interesting to see if I'm choosing a strategy that goes into improving the natural capital of the people. That might be to protect land against erosion, for instance. That this is not something that will change ownership relations between the people in the village, ownership over the land. And so the fact that someone can have power, has power of other people in the village. Yeah. Then, yeah, strange. Okay, we continue. There are slides that are they're flown away. No problem. Let's look at this picture. This is in Ethiopia. It's not my picture. I've never been in Ethiopia, but I had lots of PhD researchers working there, and I was interested in the stories and their pictures. So this is a farmer in Ethiopia, and he has 2 oxes to plow the land. Yeah, I'm a little bit anxious about the fact that he's plowing downhill, which is facilitating erosion rather than countering it. But perhaps it's difficult for the oxes to plow like this, yeah, on the hill. But the interesting thing, if you look at the capitals, is that these oxen, they are a piece of natural capital. Yeah, it's part of nature. It's at the same time financial capital because you can sell them in case of problems. And it increases a lot its social capital because you don't need these oxes every day. And so you can lend it to the neighbors when the neighbors need to plow their land. And thanks to plowing and combating the weeds, he's improving the natural capital of his field. You see how all these things come together. Yeah. And so in the end, he will have a higher yield than if he didn't have the oxes, and it will sustain human capital. His household will be better fed because his harvest will be better. Yeah. So we have to look at all these interrelations between all these things. There is not a single object that is only one capital without any relations with the other one. That relates to my last part. I'm looking at the time. I'm not sure we'll have the time to work, but we can discuss afterwards on actor network theory. That's precisely stressing that idea that you cannot look at something and extract it in an analytical way from other things. You have to take all the relations that that element has with all other elements in reality in order to understand what it means and what it can do. Okay. I'm back to sustainable livelihood approach itself, and they say there are two important things if you're a cooperation agent, and that is looking at sequencing, and so asking yourself the question, is it necessary to start improving access to one capital in order to improve the other one afterwards? Or is it not necessary and we can choose another one to start with? Yeah. So do they relate to each other in the sense that one has to come first before the other ones? And the other one is substitution, saying, well, if it's difficult to improve one capital, can we achieve better livelihood outcomes by choosing another one that replaces it? Yeah. Okay. If you want to know more about all this, it's old material, well, for you, old material, 1990. It's published in 1990. Sustainable Livelihood Guidance Sheets. I've put the address of the website where you can find them today. It's still there. 34, nearly 35 years after first publication to be used by cooperation agents, but also, of course, by researchers. Yeah, so useful to have a look at it. Oh, there is what I explained about. So they didn't flow away, they changed their position. So that's what I explained. And now I've moved the financial and natural capital. And so, but it's still wrong. So I've explained this, so I will skip it. Now, two concrete applications to give you an idea of how it works. This is an analysis, sustainable livelihood analysis, used to compare in one single region in Mali called Ségou, to compare different groups in different places and to see if then you have to differentiate your development strategies according to the groups that you have in the villages. Yeah? It's a development project by the international blah, blah, blah. I don't forget exactly what it meant, but an international, a huge international development agency. And this was the results of their research. And it says on the first graph, so this is the pentagon that has been modified because in the village, sometimes one capital was very well available, and other ones were difficult to get. And the first graph shows it's green, but let's say in black, what the planner thought about the village. So they thought that the social capital was very high, on the natural capital, access to land, and of course, it's agriculture, water. No plant can grow without water. It's a photosynthesis, so you need sun, you need water in order, and chlorophyll in order to get it. So they thought this was very high, and the dotted lines is what the villagers themselves thought about it. And so they said, yeah, we have lots of. Probably they have quite some livestock, and they said, here we're good in financial capital, but not so good in social relations with each other. And this is exaggerated here. Yeah. And then the next ones shows that if you go to different types of households in the village, their access to the livelihood assets or the capitals is different. And so one strategy for the whole village will not work. You have to differentiate according to social classes. So it goes from the non-poor household to the poor and the very poor one. As you see, the poorest one have the smallest pentagon, and this one has the biggest one. And then there were more problems to apply this idea. One was, well, if we say they have a high human capital, what does mean high in Ségou in Mali compared to me today in, where are we? Brighton, yeah, in Brighton. It's difficult to know. Or should we say, well, we will take what is the average life expectancy of someone living in Mali, and then compare if the village does better or worse. So we have, it's very relative to say you have a high human capital. You need somewhere a point of comparison, and it is important to know what point of comparison you choose. Yeah? Another one is we put human capital on a single axis on the pentagon, but you have situations where lots of people are prepared to work, but they don't have the skills. And that's very different of poor people with high skills, and very different of many people with good skills. So in fact, we would need two axes to understand the level of human capital. And perhaps we have even more, but at least these two are quite evident. So it's difficult to put it in one, to reflect, for instance, to reflect the differences between these three groups in the village. And for natural capital, you have the same problem. You can have lots of land, but if the fertility is low, or if there is not enough water to do agriculture, you will have a problem. Yeah. And so again, we have more than one dimension to assess the amount of natural capital, and so on. Yeah, you can read the rest also when the slides are available. Second example, one of my own Chinese researchers. Is there someone from China? No, yeah, half. And she, well, this was not a PhD. In Belgium, you're forced to have an international publication before you can defend your PhD. And I went to visit the region in which she worked, which was actually here, close to Hanyang, a small village, 180 people, very strange. We were in April, and it was very cold. Very interesting experience. And we went there with the Chinese high-speed train, starting from Guangzhou, so Canton. And that high-speed train was very recent. And I said, well, it's interesting to understand how that changed the life in the village. And she did a paper on that. This is the result here. So the village is somewhere this triangle close to Hanyang. And the pentagon that you see there in the light line is the pentagon of the rural population in China compared to the urban population. So the urban population would be the perfect pentagon. And you can see that this one is not a perfect one anymore. And the differences are what the rural people miss compared to the urban population in China. And then what happens when the line was built is that the villagers had easier access to urban labor markets. And so it was easier to reach large cities far away with the high-speed train than before with the normal trains. And so people who could work in the city would gain more income than people continue working the land in the village, and they would increase their prestige as well. So that means that the financial capital and the social capital, and as well as a consequence, the human capital, better food, better health services in the city, that would increase. But since they are away, the natural capital is somewhat decreasing, less access to the land because they are elsewhere. And the same for physical capital. And then the natural capital is also decreasing because they are away, and so they cannot maintain the irrigation works in the village anymore. You know, these are little canals and dikes and sluices and so on. And this is in most of the cases in earth, and you have to clean them every year, and you have to fix them with its crumble and so on. So it's an important work to make rice cultivation possible in the village. And if you don't maintain them, well, your yield will, not enough water at the right moment in your rice field, and your yield will decline. And then the access to transport infrastructure in the village, from the village itself to the local towns, has been made more difficult And even if they wanted to go to the large city, it also has been made more difficult because the price is high for the high-speed train. And what the Chinese government did, it was suppressing the normal trains. So to force the people to go to the high-speed train so that it would get money from the users to pay back for the investments of it. Yeah? So transportation was better in terms of time for the people needing to go to the city, but for all the other ones, it was not the case. And then this pentagon here shows the situation for villagers who could profit from the high-speed train, not by being on the train, but by building the railways and maintaining them. So it's very astonishing. A little village, 180 households or person, I forgot if it was, but not that many people. 20% of the adult males were working in constructing and maintaining the railways and traveling all over China where the railways were being constructed. And so the financial capital was improving a lot thanks to this, but the conditions in which they work were very bad and they came back with health problems. Yeah? It's too cold and then you have accidents during the construction work and so on and so on. So you see how you can use this. Yeah, less than half an hour left for my friend Carl Polanyi. What does that say? Yeah. Can you get to the top banner? So household capital flows. So we will use the capitals of SDI, the 5 capitals in Pentagon, and see instead of how much do the people have, what happens with these capitals. Yeah, and we start with subsistence agriculture. That means people that live from the product of their agricultural activities. They work on the land in order to produce their own food, also their own textile, also everything they need comes from the land that they are working on. Yeah, that's the idea of subsistence agriculture. And in fact, they are completely autonomous in an ideal situation. They don't need money. They don't need to exchange anything with other people. They produce all their things by themselves. That's the ideal type of subsistence agriculture. What do they need? They need land. They need means of productions to work on the land, like seeds, fertilizers, the tools to weed and to plow and so on. And of course, energy, and sometimes like the oxes more than their own energy. The oxes is increasing the capacity to work on the land. And then their own labor. And if you put the 3 together, you can do agriculture. And the outcome is an agricultural product, and that product will be consumed. And it enables you to maintain your labor capacity until you die, then it's finished. But for a long time, and meanwhile you make children, and you also feed them with that consumption so that they become labor capacity, and the circle is closed. What happens as well is that part of that agricultural product will be used to improve or at least maintain the fertility of the land. For instance, you will have land where you put livestock and you collect the manure and you put the manure on the land so that it is maintained, the fertility of it is maintained. Yeah, and you will also use some agricultural products to produce your means of production. Wood as a source of energy, or charcoal, which is much more intelligent because it's much lighter than carrying wood from the forest to your house, yeah, and things like this. So that's the circle. Light green, natural capital. Dark green, physical capital. And then in the reds, labor, human capital. Deeper red, that's the agricultural activity. In many cases, you don't do it alone, but with other people. So it involves social capital, relations, network with other people. On the agricultural product, if you do not consume everything immediately, for instance, because you have seasons, or for instance, because you want to be prepared for all sorts of shocks, it is a source of financial capital. That's what you have in order to build something to resist to problems. That's it. So, and this is a picture of farmers in Burkina Faso, close to Ouagadougou, the capital of the country. And it's interesting to see. Well, let's go back to the picture. The first one, that if you see all these people, you understand it's not a single household or family. All these guys are about the same age, and so probably they come from different households of the village, and they work together on a single field. Another interesting thing, well, you see the tools also that they use, but another interesting thing is that you don't see any fence or hedge or any marker of private property of the land. In fact, it is collective used land. Yeah, and if I go back to my scheme, everything that is now in green is an object of reciprocal relations between the people. So in fact, the village forms a network of people, and they will exchange between each other the land that is in fact collective. They will exchange the means of production. If your tool doesn't work, you go to the neighbor and you ask the tool and you get the tool of the neighbor. They will exchange labor. People are there working on the field that is producing the food for one household, but other people are working for them there. And in turn, these other people will do the same for the other guy. Yeah? And the product itself also is not all privatized by a single household, but it goes to the village granary and everybody can have access to it. Yeah. So if we must understand the pure logics of reciprocity, this is the guy you should read, Polanyi, let's say an economic anthropologist, Austrian, but he worked, as far as I remember, first in the UK and then later on in the US. And his most famous book is called The Great Transformation, 1944, during the war. And one thing that is there, he does not always use himself the term, is economic integration. And what is economic integration? It's the way people, the type of relations the people engage in order to have access to their means of existence. And he said in that book, or you can extract from the book, that you only have 3 types of these social relations, and that you cannot imagine a 4th one. If when you have the 3, you have every possible situation in your hands. So it's, on the one hand, of course, it's a theoretical concept, but it's also holistic in the sense that you can capture all sorts of empirical, observed relations that the people engage in order to get access to the means of existence. And so one of them is reciprocity. But before we go in there, the logic is as such. The households, like I said before, that's the unit, the social unit in which human life is reproduced with these 2 temporalities, everyday reproduction, so the maintenance of your labor capacity, and then from generation to generation, the replacement of the old by younger people. And economic integration means that even if we were talking about subsistence agriculture, the households cannot do this. It's within the context of the village and all the relations of every household in the village. So every household has to integrate into a larger system in order to get these means of existence. Think of yourself. Once, I don't know, yeah, probably you are independent of your parents. And what's the way you get access to your means of existence? Is finding a job. And so you enter into a labor market. So a market will be one of these types of relations, just like reciprocity is one. Yeah. So the economic integration is about how the households are integrated in a larger economic systems that give them this access to the means of existence. So in our modern societies, it's mainly, not completely, but it's mainly the market. Some of you perhaps have a study grant. And so that doesn't come from the market. That comes from the state. Yeah? And it's paid by contributions of taxpayers. So clearly, it's not a market with supply and demand and a price that decides if you have enough money or not to buy it or not. No, it's a completely different system. That's in fact the 3rd one. Yeah? So one is reciprocity. The second one, like study grants, is redistribution. You bring things together, like tax contribution, bring together, and the state decides how much you have to pay the taxpayers, and it will decide what we'll do with the money, paying student grants to people that we think are will be nice if they can do academic studies. Yeah? And the third one is market exchange. Nothing else exists in human societies in terms of social relations to access the means of existence than these three types of relations. Yeah, and they are very much interrelated as well, just like the capital assets. Yeah, there are hybrid realities. This is a old man, and I don't know if it's his wife or his mother, doesn't matter, but he has decided to offer her some flowers. And if you look at the flowers, it is 21, I don't know how much in Britain, in Great Britain, but in Belgium, it's 21% VAT. So he's contributing to, with taxes, to a redistribution system. Perhaps some of that money will go to students' grants, yeah, or to unemployment benefits, or to social aid, or maintaining the roads, whatever you, National Health Service, whatever you can imagine. Why does he offer the flowers to his wife or his mother? That is to maintain the good relation with her. So it's a matter of maintaining the reciprocity, which he shows that he cares for her, and he hopes that in return she will care for him if he's in need. Perhaps she will take care of him if he's ill, something like this. Yeah, and the flowers are bought on the market, so they have been produced to be sold on the market, not as a free gift. No, they are produced to be sold, and the guy has bought the flowers. Okay. Other things that make it very interrelated, mutual influences. Imagine you're here, you've finished your studies, you look for a job, so you go on the labor market. It's a market. You'll be confronted with supply and demand. You're a specialist in development and climate change. Oh, we have too many agents working on this already, coming from ideas. We know what they can do and what they can't do. So no, we don't know, no, oh, there's not enough money from international agents for pay for you for this. No job. Yeah, the market says, sorry, the supply from ideas is too high and the demand is too low. So unless, if there was a pure market, labor market, they would say, unless you're prepared to work for a very low wage because the supply is too high, we don't hire you. Yeah, and then you're excluded from the market and you go to the redistribution sphere. And you hope there to get social security benefits, perhaps an unemployment benefits, or perhaps some grant to train you in something else so that your skills are different and you are not a type of human capital than when you come out of IDS. And possibly the government is very neoliberal and says the state should take his hand away from the markets and not influence people, let the market do it. So we stop paying grants, or we limit unemployment benefits in a very short time to force people to find work by themselves. But you don't find work because you have that IDS diploma. Yeah? And then what happens? You're excluded from the redistribution sphere or economic integration, and you hope that some people somewhere will help you to survive. You go back to your parents and you say, Mom, I'm sorry, I don't find a job. I don't get unemployment benefits. I come and live in Hotel Mama. You know that concept? 30 years old people still living with their parents because they cannot live independently because of how society is structured. Yeah. So that you see the different elements. Let's go back to reciprocity. And in its pure form, how do people access to their means of existence? Well, by expressing a need within a social network and hoping that some or more people in the network will respond to the need. You have to work on your land. It's too big to do it alone. And you hope that some villages will join you to work on your land. And the integration appears because of that expression of that need. If you don't express the need, you will know how, you have no reciprocal relations. The response is that not immediately yourself, you will have to work on the land of someone else. No, the response will be when you are able to respond to a need from someone in the network. And that might be something completely different than working on this land. Perhaps you're good in recognizing medical plants, and the guy is ill, and so you know what plants to go and fetch on in the forest in order to cure the guy. Yeah. So that's the power of reciprocity. It is not an immediate exchange. You do something for me, I'm forced immediately to do something for you. No. The core of the system is expressing needs and the capacity to respond to the needs. And you see, sometimes we were discussing during making buying some stuff for my bike this morning. You see sometimes people that refrain entering in a reciprocal relations because they think about themselves. I'm not able to offer something back to the people. I cannot do anything. I'm poor. I'm unskilled. The people don't like me. And so they refrain from accepting help, even if the need is obvious for everybody, because of the fear of not being able to respond to it. And so to function in the system of reciprocity. The regulation of these exchanges is a moral obligation to respect the balance between what you give and what you receive and what you give, but in the very long term. You have to wait until someone has a need to which you can respond because you have the skills for doing it. Yeah. So it must be long term, and therefore you need social networks and stable social network where the people show fidelity to the network. Yeah. Long-term network, the structure, the social structure in terms of rank and in terms of stratification that appears out of this is very egalitarian. Yeah? Nobody can become richer than someone else. Nobody is exploiting someone else there. So it's an egalitarian society, and it stays like this as long as possible. And that's a term I propose myself. The condition to be integrated is to be affiliated to the network. And filius in Latin means son. The son, every son has a father. It's impossible to be a son without having a father. And so it's the same here. You must be like a son of the network and be very, very, what do you say in English? The fact of fidelity being être fidèle. Faithful. You have to be faithful to the network. Yeah? And that means that you build up a society, a reciprocal society from the bottom, from individuals that express their needs. There is nothing like someone above that says, I will invent a reciprocal society, and then I will tell to the people, you have to form a network, and I will decide when you exchange them. No, it's really a bottom-up organization of society that appears. Yeah. Now, in fact, what I said is a little bit a lie compared to the picture, because the picture is one where the land is collective, and so not exchanged on reciprocal basis between the people, but in fact an object of redistribution. The land is collective in the sense that you could imagine that everybody has a piece of land, but he brings his piece of land together with all the other ones, and it becomes collective land. And the use of every piece of land is not decided by every household, it's decided by the head of that redistribution system, and that's a land chief. So in every village in Mali, you will have a land chief. And this guy disposes about all the land and makes a decision about who is going to get how much land every year according to the needs of the household. There is a house making a new child, there is one more to feed, and he will receive a larger plot of land than the year before. And someone is dying in some households, and the land will be smaller. Some land is very good, another land is not good at all. We will not give the very good land to the same households year in, year out. No, everybody will have a chance in turn to use the best land, and so on and so on and so on. Yeah? There is a newcomer in the village, an immigrant, he will receive a piece of land. And the chief decides which piece of land. Yeah? So this is completely different. It's a redistribution system. And that means that in one or another way, everybody contributes to a common pool of resources, like putting the land together in one single one single collection of land. Yeah, it can be also like our modern social security systems. You pay taxes, you pay contributions. So you accept that the things that you use are part of a collective ownership rather than yours. And in return, you will receive benefits, the possibility to consume the resource that has been brought together. But both things, how much do you give to the collective and how much you reserve and what you reserve in return is decided in a political institution. These are political decisions. It's the government that decides how much tax you have to pay. And it's the government that decides what he will do with all that money and all this means. That's the budget of the government. And so when we have elections, we elect, in fact, people that have the right to decide what we contribute and what we get back. Yeah? And a political institution like this can perfectly organize what is called a negative redistribution. And that means we take money or means or resources from everybody and we give it to the dictator, to the chief, to the army, things like this. And the people get poor because they have to give, but they don't receive anything back. Or it can be the country, the welfare state. We decide that the rich contribute a little more than the poor, and we have a social security system that enables the poor to live better than before. Or we put lots of money in the education and the health system, and we improve the life, the capitals, the human capital and of these people through the redistribution system. So redistribution is always political. That doesn't mean you need the state, but that means that the people or the institutions that decide about what is redistributed and how is a political institution. So taking action for the whole group that participates in the system. So it's public, yeah? It's decisions that affect everybody and everybody agrees in one or another way with this. Or if it's a dictatorship, it's also redistribution. You don't agree, but you have to accept at least. Yeah? And the relations are relations of rights and duties. The duties are you have to contribute, and the rights is what do you receive back. Sometimes you have lots of duties and no rights. And if you're poor and a very well organized welfare state, you have few duties, but a lot of rights in order to improve your situation. And if the situation improves, your rights will diminish and your duties will increase. Yeah? So the result of this is hierarchy, because there is an institution that has power over the whole system and decides for it. And if you look at the spatial organization of modern societies, it is also very clearly a hierarchical, in at least continental Europe, well, and Ireland. Today you have Europe, and you even have above the United Nations, but they lack lots of power today for solving the problems we have. But we have the European Union with lots of power. And then you have the countries, and then you have the regions, and then you have the municipalities, and sometimes something in between. And you see, it's like an army. It's the same hierarchy, yeah? And to be member of the system is being a citizen. And in modern societies, in the real sense of the word, if you are an asylum seeker, paperless, well, perhaps you have a little bit rights if your society is not too hard with immigrants, but it will be very, very minimal. Yeah, and you vote for the right and the extreme right parties, and they will tell you these people don't belong here, and so no rights at all. This is the best policy we can have in order to get rid of them. So you must be a citizen to participate. And in a sense, the villagers with the collective land and the land chief are citizens of that redistribution system. Okay, and that's top-down integration. Yeah, it's a top that decides who belong to the system. In most of the redistribution systems, they will decide about an area with a border, and everybody that is inside participates to it. You can compare this to feudalism. Yeah, on feudal land with a lord that is heading the land, he will organize negative redistribution, taxing all the farmers on his territory in order to become rich himself. Yeah, and they have to do this because they are on the territory of the guy. Yep. Okay, now what we saw in Burkina Faso is that lands become collective. There is redistribution, and it's redistribution of land to the households. That is what is happening there. Yeah. Now you can imagine another thing, that there is a state in Burkina Faso, and it says, well, you produce an agricultural product, you have to pay taxes. That might be part of the product, and then the country would take these products and sell it in international markets and get devices. Or it could be that the farmer is forced to produce something he can sell on the market, so he has monetary income, so he can pay the taxes. Very different situation from subsistence agriculture, where you don't need money at all. And then you can also contribute in terms of labor. And the government or the feudal lord will certainly do this. He will say to you, you are on my territory, this is a negative redistribution system, and every year you will work, I don't know, 30 days, and I will decide which days to maintain the roads, to work on my own fields for my own subsistence, to serve in the army, to increase my territory, I will attack the neighbor, and things like this. So you can also contribute in labor time. Yeah, it's also a form of taxes. And then, so that will be redistributed. And the problem is then, will that affect, it's transforming, so compared to subsistence agriculture, it's transforming the structures and the processes of the society in which you are. And the question then is, will this improve the livelihoods of the people or not? So we have a question mark there. If it's positive, it might improve labor, better health and education. It might improve the means of production because the state is buying high quality seeds on the international markets and distributing it to the farmers, and so they have better seeds or better tools. Or it can be improving the land by high influences, geomorphologists and bioengineers that will fight against erosion on your land, something like this. But it can also be enriching the dictator of Burkina. I don't know who is in charge of Burkina Faso today, but in many African countries, and luckily, the redistribution is very negative, and different factions of powerful people. He was talking about this yesterday. Factions of very powerful people want to be in power in order to channel all the wealth from that redistribution systems in their own pockets. Yep. Okay, we are running late. Well, this is an example of positive redistribution. They build a dam through the state. No, not through the state. It was through a missionary. And they built a dam in Burkina Faso, increasing the availability of water, and increasing therefore the agricultural products. Okay. Now, imagine monetary agriculture. So the people, possibly they still produce some products for their own consumption, but most of it will be produced to be sold on the market. And you will understand, if you live in a state where they say you have to pay taxes and it has to be money, it forces subsistence farmer to move into cash crop agriculture. So instead of producing I'm saying anything. Instead of producing their own food, they will start to produce tobacco. They cannot survive on tobacco, and they will specialize in tobacco, and they will have all their land will be used for producing tobacco, and they will sell it on or coffee. That's a very common one. And they sell the coffee, and the end result is not food for them, so no subsistence. It's money, and with the money they can buy their means of existence. Yeah? So the government, by the taxes, can force people into cash crop farming. Also, if they say, okay, we provide education for your children, or we provide health service, but you have to pay. It's not free. So you need money. They won't accept tobacco leaves or coffee bags. and they want money. So you're forced to enter into the market. Yeah. So you get a commodity, and that commodity will be sold on the market, and you will get a monetary income. With that monetary income, you will buy commodities that you will consume yourself, and so you can reproduce there. You can reproduce your labor force through this. So that's a completely other system. And part of the monetary income can also be used to buy means of production and to buy more land or buy things that improve your land. Yeah. Okay. So there we have markets, completely different from redistribution, completely different from a reciprocity. And one thing that is peculiar to markets is that necessarily you will need transportation means and transportation infrastructure. So that's why I showed the road and its mules, I think, there. You have to bring your coffee to the market. And the market is not just behind your doorstep. No, it's the city. And it's 20 kilometers away. And so you need these means of transportation. Sometimes it's the merchant in the city that will come and fetch your crop at your house, but they will say, you have to pay for my travel costs, of course. And so you will get less money because he's doing it. Yeah? So it transformed completely the economic organization of the territory. Markets appear, and that means lots of traffic of goods and service and the infrastructure for doing it. The other thing is that the land becomes completely privatized. What you produce is for the market, and it will give your income, so you don't want to share it with someone else. Imagine that you do lots of efforts to increase the fertility of your land, and then that the land chief says, well, now your land is not yours anymore, it's a neighbor that can work on it. Yeah, but I invested in it, you say then, and so you want to keep it yours. And what appears there, you can see it on the picture, fences to show this is my land, don't come in. And this is papaya trees, yeah, and so the guy doesn't want that thieves comes and take all the papaya. So he protects it because it becomes those private ownership appears very strongly in relation with the introduction of markets in society. So what is markets exchange? Access to means of existence. You have to sell something in order to get an income, in order to buy your means of existence. Yeah, and that goes through markets. And then the price, the regulation, is through the price. It's supply versus demand confronted. It gives you a price, and that price, you know, probably all these graphs of supply and demand curves, and it decides about the price on the one hand and the quantity that will be produced on the other hand. Yeah, lots of it is fake, if you want my impressions about it. And if we had lots of time, I would show you alternative figures about how the market works, but we don't have time for it. So, but this affects the price, and the quantities affect the production and consumption decisions. You will, as a producer, try to produce something for which the price is very high. And you will, as a consumer, try to consume things for which the price is very low. As far as you can substitute one for the other, yeah. You cannot say, I'm not going to consume food during this month and I will buy new shirts because the shirts are cheap and the food is expensive. No, you need your food. So it's not working perfectly. The institution, there is no institution. It's well, you need a set of institutions like the stock market and the marketplace in the city and things like this. But there is no chief of the market. There is no chief of the market. Yeah? It's really the free market exchange that works. And it works only if everybody is free to decide what he is going to produce and what he is going to consume. If you're forced to produce something, you cannot respond to the signals of the prices. If the prices goes up, it says to the producers, you should produce more of this. But if you're forced to produce a certain quantity and you cannot move, the market doesn't function. And the same for consumption. Yeah? If you consume more of something, and the supply will be the same, the price will go up. And so we expect then that some producers will react and produce more of it. Okay? And because you cannot, this is a little bit complicated, but nevertheless, because you cannot decide beforehand how much the people will consume, You take a risk when you decide what you will produce. And therefore, it is impossible that you achieve the perfect balance where all the prices are equal in terms of the production costs, and that you can choose different things because the relative price of all the things will be the same. It's never like this. So you will always have people that produce something for which the supply was low and the demand was high, and there will be winners on the market because the price will be high, and other people that necessarily, therefore, will be in a situation where the supply is too high and the demand is too low, and therefore the price will be low and there will be the losers. So a market is a fantastic machine to produce social inequalities, stratification. It produces Elon Musk. He's a winner. And it produces also the unemployed people. They are the losers. Your IDS diploma. Bad production decision. Yeah, there you are with your diploma, and the supply is too high, the demand is too low. I'm joking. I hope you will have a very nice job, of course. Yeah. And the condition to be integrated in the market, say, I am the owner of a piece of the total labor capacity of my economic system. I can, as a free person, decide what I will do with it, and I will be assessed in this decision in terms of social usefulness. In other words, did I decide to produce something for which there is a demand? But you cannot know the demand in advance. The demand is only there when the people see what products they can buy. It's like innovation. Innovation is the same. I've had to buy a smartphone in order to have a GPS if I got lost during my bike trip. Yeah, I still don't know how I have to use all the things that are on this. But 30 years ago, I was also biking, and I would have said, that would have been fantastic to have a smartphone. No, I cannot say this because it didn't exist. I couldn't even imagine it. Yeah. And there are lots of things that were there before and that have completely disappeared now. And so the innovation is something that is changing completely again all the balances on the markets. And you cannot buy it unless it is produced. But if you produce it, you do not know if the people are willing to buy it. And in any case, if it's you, there are only a few pioneers among the consumers that will buy it. And then they will say to the neighbor, look what I've bought, guys, this is fantastic. You should buy it as well. And then it goes like this. Or you can say, I buy something, but buy bullshit. Don't do that. And then the innovator has taken a risk and it doesn't work. Yeah. Okay. Yep, it's time. Let me see, just say this. Because of this, the market is not a system that, so the mode of economic integration is a difficult one here. The market does not integrate people with one another. Lots of sociologists say it is the case. Yeah, Durkheim was the most prominent one, saying the market is making all the people depending from all the other ones. And so it's making society. But look at the word competition. And look at the fact that necessarily you will have winners and losers. And so the market makes that everybody is an enemy in economic terms of someone else. And it creates deep, deep individualism. We are now a society where, ideologically speaking, capitalism now has a great victory since more than 20 years, and that's that people are incredibly individual. And they think if I'm successful, it's thanks to my talents and who I am. And they say to the poor, if you are poor, it's because of your own assets. Yeah, it's your fault. It's your responsibility. So imagine redistribution or reciprocity instead of the answer would be completely different. It would be, oh, you're poor. We are in a reciprocal system. How can I help you? Or just ask what you need and we'll try if we can solve the problem. And if you are a welfare state, it would say, well, the market is creating inequalities. Let's correct it with contributions, progressive contributions. The more your wage or your gains, your income, the more you pay taxes, and we redistribute so that everybody lives in a decent condition. Okay, so now I think it's really time. So I'm far from everything I wanted to say. I have much more critics based on Polanyi on the problem of the market, and he's very good at that. So you can read the slides. If you want more explanation on it, I can send you a little paper. It's a short one that clarifies these things. And if you have more questions, I'm always ready to respond. I've put my email address on the slide. Okay.